Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, another in my series of what I call milestone moments. These are moments in a band's career where they release a legendary album, where they help define an entire generation. So, the band and album that I've picked for today is The Doors and their self-titled album from 1967. So, 1967 was a really interesting kind of turning point year in rock. You had the Beatles released Sgt. Pepper. You had the Rolling Stones released Satanic Majesty's Request, sort of their answer to Sgt. Pepper. Frank Zappa had already released his Freak Out album and had released Lumpy Gravy in this year. You had Pink Floyd released their first album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Jimi Hendrix released his first album, Are You Experienced? Can you believe all these legendary albums? And they all came out in 1967. So The Doors, Jim Morrison, one of the greatest singers in rock, one of the biggest singers in rock. And this is where it all gets started. And this is an amazing, amazing record. For me, The Doors, I mentioned all those other bands. I mentioned Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and the Stones. Well, when the Doors came around, they really had a unique sound. And for me, it was a combination of a couple of things. It was Jim Morrison's amazing voice. He has this baritone like Elvis or Frank Sinatra, but way more rock and roll, way more gritty. He's not afraid to push his upper range and get a little distorted and get intense, and also his lyrics. Jim was a poet, and that really comes through in his lyrics and his wordplay and his imagery and just the way he sings and puts his lyrics together. And also the band, you've got Ray Manzarek on keyboards, who's kind of jazzy and bluesy. You've got Robbie Krieger on guitar, who's a really interesting guitar player. He always had kind of a clean guitar sound, and he's kind of like a jazzy flamenco influenced like guy. He plays with his fingers, the types of chords that he played and the way that he soloed. And then John Densmore on drums, who is also really jazz influenced and brought a lot of interesting sounds to the band. Also of note, they didn't have a bass player, although on this record, Larry Knechel, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, he played bass on Light My Fire and Soul Kitchen, but the rest is just Ray Manzarek's left hand, which was also a unique thing for that added to the unique sound of the Doors. So this album is just chock full of legendary hits from the band. Starts with Break On Through, and this is a good example of the different various influences that they brought to the band. You had John Densmore playing like this bossa nova type beat where he's, instead of hitting the snare drum, he's hitting the rim shot, playing this samba Latin style beats. And then you've got Ray's part over the top of that, and then the break on through to the other, that part right there is just like a blues lick, and that's Robbie Krieger playing like this sort of slightly distorted, great bluesy sounding lick. And then of course Jim's vocals, the way he can sing in the verse, and then your day destroys the night, and then when the chorus comes around, break on through to, he goes into that upper range and gets sort of gritty, a little bit of distortion in his voice, and the lyrics too, they're really kind of trippy, really fit in with this time, this psychedelic era, the hippie movement and all that kind of stuff. Then you got Soul Kitchen, and here's again them showing their blues influence, and Jim was so great at being able to sing so many different things, and this is a good example of it. He gets really bluesy. He's got that sort of gritty, muddy waters, Howlin' Wolf like vibe when he goes up into his upper range. Let me sleep all night in your soul kitchen, and the group is just swinging really bluesy. Really, they're able to really play that really well. Move from their jazzy influence to this really sort of down and gritty kind of blues thing. And then they shift gears again, and Crystal Ship, one of my favorite songs on the record here. And here Jim is in full, almost like romantic with the way he sings in this. He's very, very laid back. I love the lyrics in it, very imagey, playing with words. I love the piano solo in this and the chord progression underneath it. Just a really, really beautiful song, and just sung really well by Jim. 20th Century Fox. She's a 20th Century Fox. Just a fun one, fun rocker. There are two covers on this album. Alabama Song, which is a bluesy cover, again showing Jim showing off his blues influence, and the whole band. This is sort of a fun one. It has almost like a carnival-like feel to it with the way the organ is. I must have whiskey on your wife. Ba-da-ba-ba. Ba-ba-ba. That's just great. I love that. It has like a carnival like organ sound to it that's just fantastic. And the background vocals. This is another thing too with the Doors. They had sort of this fun side to them too, and the way they handle this song is a good example of that. And then of course the legendary Light My Fire, right? Maybe their biggest hit, total classic rock staple. Amazing that a song this long with this long of a keyboard solo and a guitar solo gets played on the radio. Back then the record label freaked out, and they had to make like an edited version of it, but now you hear the whole version, and it's just great. I love that intro. That intro is classic. This sort of descending chord progression, and then the vibe of the song, very, very jazzy. It's swinging. It's basically like a swing thing, and then they go off into a real jazzy solo section. The keyboards really going out. I love Robbie Krieger's guitar solo in this. Again, it shows kind of his like jazzy Spanish influence type sound. Like he does play some blues licks, but he's just playing more kind of like for the guitar players out there, modally, moving around on it. And of course, Jim sounds great. The lyrics in it are just great. His delivery is great. I forgot to mention the production. This was produced by Paul A. Rothchild. And for its time, the production is excellent. There's a lot of records from this era where they weren't really mixing things yet for stereo. A lot of stuff at this time was mixed mono. It was intended for mono, and the stereo mixes were just sort of afterthoughts. And this is the way like all the Beatles stuff was. So sometimes back then, this stuff can be really like, sound really strange, like all the instruments in one channel, all the vocals in another. But that's not the case here. It's more centered with the vocals. It's more evenly sort of spread out. And it's amazing because they recorded this on a 4-track machine. Now, for those that aren't musicians, it's the tape machine that they used. They had 4 inputs. So they put the guitar and keyboard, I believe I read, on one channel, the drums on one, and Jim on another, and then they just used a 4th channel every now and then to just add some extra vocals or an extra thing here and there. And it's basically just like a live record. There aren't really a ton of like overdubs or anything like that, but it sounds really, really, really great, for the time that it came out back in 1967. Again, you had, everybody's really turning a page here in rock and roll history. You've got, the Beatles releasing Sgt. Pepper, and it's sort of ushering into getting away from Before this, everybody was doing like singles. Bands released singles. They culled the singles together and they put them then on a record. That's the way the Beatles and the Stones and the Beach Boys and all those bands operated. But with Sgt. Pepper and like here with the Doors, this is a, although they had singles from this record, this really feels like an album. It doesn't just feel like a random collection of singles. It has an album feel to it. So, all right, then side two of the record is starts with the other cover, Willie Dixon cover, Backdoor Man. I love this is another grinding kind of blues, and I love Jim's. You may eat your dinner, eat your pork and beans. I eat more chicken than any man ever seen. Yeah, that's great, man. I love it. Yeah. Again, Jim, he was a great blues singer. People sometimes forget that. He gets sort of, you think he's thought of more as like maybe a psychedelic from this era, or I don't know, he just maybe, in my opinion, when I think of Jim, I really think of him as a great blues singer, and he really shows that off here. I Looked at You is a fun, upbeat one. End of the Night is another ballad, which is really nice. Take It As It Comes, another kind of upbeat one. The record is kind of side A. It's packed with all the hits like Break On Through, Soul Kitchen, Crystal Ship, Alabama Song, Light My Fire. But then side 2 ends with the big one, the big epic here, The End. And this is just a fantastic, moody song. Whenever I hear the intro of this song, it makes me think of probably one of be in the top 10 of my favorite movies of all time, Apocalypse Now. If you've never seen that movie, the movie starts with this song playing, and there's all these helicopter sounds and everything, Vietnam era helicopters, and this song is just great, man. It's so moody. I love that minor chord guitar plucked thing that Robbie Krieger plays plays there for the intro, and there's that sort of ominous keyboard bass do 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 do, and then Jim's vocal delivery. This is the end. There's a lot of reverb on his voice. I also love the drums in this too. The toms on the drums, like stay here and we'll meet again. Go 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 go. There's all these like simple drum fills, but they've got a ton of reverb on them, so they just sound so. The whole song sounds really like just massive and spacious, and a lot of space, and it just adds like to the sort of the creepy atmosphere to the thing. And then there's the whole middle section there where the killer awoke before dawn, he put his boots on, and Jim does that whole reciting that whole thing, Father, I want to kill you, and then the thing with his mother, and then he screams, and then the song just builds and builds, and it just gets faster and faster till it sort of ends in this sort of climactic crashing ending, and then it's back drops back down into this is the end, like the beginning again, and it just sort of holds out, man. What an awesome, ending to this record. What an awesome song, and the way it just starts from the beginning and the way it just builds, man. So full of dynamics. This is something that in the modern age, you don't hear people doing anything like this anymore. And this song is a great example of, if this was done in this day and age, it would have been ruined by a computer. They would have played it to a click track. It would have been all like squared off and squeezed down and made all like, it just would have lost it. This is a band playing live, just feeling it. That fast part where it builds up, kill, and is going through, getting more energetic and getting more crazy. I mean, that is the sound of a band playing together and just gelling and just, energy and emotion and feeling, and you don't get that a lot in a lot of modern recordings. But hey, maybe that's a topic for another video. But it's just a fantastic way to end the album. A great song. I love it totally. What a great atmosphere and mood that song sets. So, all right, there you go. Milestone moment. The Doors, and even right here from the beginning, I love they had their logo right from the beginning. You've got this classic picture of Jim, just a rock icon, like guy right from a star right from the beginning. The back cover with the band. This is like a earlier pressing of this, and it sounds great here. A lot of the remastered versions of this also sound fantastic. You really can't go wrong with any version of this that you pick up. So just an amazing album, an amazing milestone moment. It sets off the career for the Doors, sets off rock really in general. In 1967 starts really moving in a more serious direction, and I think this album was a big part of this, and it really launched, here the band and the Jim Morrison, one of the greatest rock singers of all time. So, all right, there you go. Everybody out there, I'm sure you're familiar with at least half this record. You've heard so many of these songs on the radio. But if you haven't listened to it in a while, man, put it back on. Put some headphones on and sit back and get into this record. It is such a great ride from beginning to end, all the different feels and things, and the way this album ends. The perfect ending, the end. So, all right, let me know what you guys think of this album in the comments. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.